Hi. Okay. Align mo siya.
Nobody simply handed Alex Eala her spot in the main draw of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix. She stepped into the prestigious Stuttgart event only because Qinwen Zheng, the Olympic gold medalist, was forced to withdraw with a lingering elbow injury. Ranked 45th in the world at the time, the young Filipino talent made her way onto the clay courts of Germany and faced a tough first-round exit on April 15, falling 6-1, 6-4 to Leila Fernandez in front of a packed and energetic Stuttgart crowd. On paper, it looked like an unremarkable week, just another early departure that would quickly fade from memory amid the busy tennis calendar. But the true story of Stuttgart didn't actually begin when the match started or when the balls were put into play. It ignited earlier, in the lively and bustling atmosphere of the Porsche Village, the fan engagement zone that serves as the vibrant social centerpiece of the entire tournament. Before Alex Eala had even struck a single competitive ball in the event, something extraordinary and quite unexpected unfolded right there in real time. The demand for her autographs surged with such intensity that the tournament organizers themselves were caught off guard. The frenzy grew so overwhelming that the official channels of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix had no choice but to publicly acknowledge it, posting about how Alex Eala's signature had suddenly become the single most wanted item among all the players present that day. This wasn't happening at some small local event. This was the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, a historic WTA tournament with nearly 5 decades of rich tradition behind it, a venue that had welcomed and celebrated tennis icons like Martina Navratilova, Maria Sharapova, Martina Hingis, and Angelique Kerber across its long and celebrated history. And yet here in April 2026, it was the 20-year-old Filipino rising star whose presence created the biggest buzz, whose name echoed through the space, and whose autograph lines stretched the longest. Even her upcoming opponent, Leila Fernandez, was somewhere in that very building, quietly observing the remarkable chaos swirling around Yala. Later, after the match had been played and won, Fernandez sat down for her post-match interview and found herself struggling to maintain her usual professional composure. Every time the conversation turned toward Alex Eala, her words would soften, her expressions would shift, and she would dissolve into pure, unfiltered admiration. That reaction alone transformed what appeared to be a straightforward first-round loss into something far more significant, a powerful statement about the kind of impact this young player is already making. To truly understand why this moment carried so much weight, it helps to first appreciate what the Porsche Village actually represents. It is far more than just a simple sponsor booth, a branded photo opportunity, or a casual fan interaction area. The Porsche Village functions as the beating social heart of the Stuttgart Tournament Week. It is the dedicated space where players and fans come together in a structured yet warm environment. Autographs are signed, photographs are taken, conversations flow freely, and the true personality and atmosphere of the event take shape. Over the years, virtually every top WTA player on the planet has walked through this space during tournament week. Players like Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Alina Rybakina, and many others have all spent time there, engaging with supporters amid the historic surroundings. This is a venue steeped in nearly 50 years of tennis royalty passing through its doors. And on that particular day in April 2026, it was Alex Eala, not one of the established superstars, whose autograph stood out as the most desired by far. The tournament's own organizers didn't just notice it quietly, they deliberately highlighted it in their public posts, drawing specific attention to the phenomenon. Organizations like this rarely do something so pointed unless the demand has become genuinely impossible to manage or ignore. When the people running one of the most respected and historic events on the WTA calendar feel the need to publicly spotlight that a 20-year-old Filipino player has generated the strongest fan interest in their fan zone, it signals that something genuinely meaningful is taking place. What makes this even more compelling is the specific context of how Alex Eala actually arrived in Stuttgart. She didn't come through the front door as a seeded player, a headline attraction, or someone the tournament had actively built marketing campaigns around. Instead, she entered quietly through a side entrance created by circumstance and injury. After Qinwen Zheng pulled out with her elbow problem and Emma Navarro also withdrew, Eala received the call as a lucky loser replacement and slotted into the main draw. She had not secured direct entry based on her ranking alone at that moment, coming off a disappointing second-round exit at the Linz Open the week before, where she had led convincingly in both sets against Jelena Ostapenko but ultimately fell 6-4, 7-5. Her clay season had opened on a difficult note. So she arrived in Stuttgart not with fanfare, not with guaranteed attention, but almost under the radar. Despite this understated entry, she still managed to become the most talked-about figure in the entire Porsche Village even before her first match began. That sharp contrast is what gives the story its real depth. The tennis world usually rewards attention through concrete results, high rankings, titles, deep runs, and big events. Those are the traditional currencies that typically buy the kind of spotlight and fan devotion Alex Eala was receiving. At that point, she had only one WTA title to her name and had never competed at this particular tournament before. Tournament director Marcus Gaet later confirmed it clearly. Alex Eala was the very first Filipino player to ever appear in the 48-year history of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix. That historical detail completely reframes the entire narrative. This wasn't a seasoned player returning to familiar ground and drawing on years of built-up goodwill. This was a true debut, a first-time experience in a prestigious European clay event, and the reaction from the fans inside the Porsche Village was so powerful and immediate that it forced the tournament itself to document and celebrate it publicly. A huge part of that electric atmosphere came from the dedicated Filipino fan base who didn't simply attend, they mobilized with impressive energy and passion. Their support had already been turning heads earlier in the season. At the Australian Open in January 2026, the situation grew so intense that Tennis Australia faced open criticism for scheduling Eala on Court 6, a smaller and more intimate venue, instead of moving her to one of the larger show courts. Hundreds of her Filipino supporters were left disappointed. Turned away from the main stands and had to follow the match on nearby big screens. Even Novak Djokovic, deep into what was becoming a record-breaking attendance tournament, specifically mentioned Alex Eala when asked about the crowds. He stated it plainly and without exaggeration. She's coming from the Philippines, which is now a big deal. Coming from a player like Djokovic, who chooses his words carefully and rarely offers throwaway compliments, that comment carried real weight. Then, in Dubai during February 2026, world number 6 Amanda Anisimova took things a step further after her own quarterfinal win. Rather than heading straight to recovery or media duties, she stayed behind at the venue to watch part of Alex Eala's third-round victory against Sorana Cirstea. In the press room afterward, Anisimova didn't offer a quick, polite remark. She spoke with genuine enthusiasm about the incredible atmosphere created by Eala's fans, calling it amazing. For a top 10 player to voluntarily remain courtside to observe a rival's match and then publicly highlight the spectacle is highly unusual on the demanding WTA tour. Players operate on tight, exhausting schedules filled with travel, training, and recovery. They rarely linger to watch others unless something truly special is drawing them in. By the time the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart arrived, this pattern of growing attention and cultural impact had been steadily building across multiple continents and tournaments. So when Alex Eala walked into the Porsche Village that day, she wasn't entering as an unfamiliar face or a complete outsider. She arrived as someone whose growing cultural footprint had already traveled ahead of her, creating anticipation and excitement long before she stepped onto the practice courts or the fan zone. This larger phenomenon was very much part of what Leylah Fernandez was reacting to when she faced the media after their match. Fernandez, at 23 years old, is a well-established name on the WTA circuit. The daughter of a Filipino mother and an Ecuadorian father born and raised in Canada, she has represented her country with pride and reached the dramatic 2021 U.S. Open final, one of the most memorable Grand Slam finals in recent years. With 5 WTA titles and a career-high ranking of world number 13, she entered Stuttgart ranked 25th and delivered a commanding performance against Eala. She stormed through the first set, building a commanding 5-0 lead before her opponent could find any rhythm. In the second set, Fernandez broke twice to lead 5-2 and seemed poised for a straightforward close. Eala showed her fighting spirit in the later stages, breaking back, holding serve, and making it 4-5 while saving 2 match points along the way. But Fernandez regrouped, stayed focused, and eventually served out the victory. Overall, Fernandez claimed 63 of the 109 points played that day, while Eala won just 42% of the total points. On her second serve, Fernandez was particularly strong, winning 61% compared to Eala's 40%. The scoreline was not especially flattering for the young Filipino player. Yet when Fernandez sat down for her post-match interview, her tone and demeanor told a different story. Asked about the similarities between herself and Eala, both left-handed, both aggressive baseliners who prefer to play fast and attack early in the rally, her response came quickly and felt deeply sincere. She described the match as feeling like competing against a mirror image of herself. She admitted she had actually enjoyed the challenge of figuring out the patterns and even found moments of fun in it. But then she went further, reaching back into her memory. She recalled watching a young Alex Eala train years earlier at the Rafa Natal Academy and turning to her coach at the time with the words, "Wow, she plays quick." The fact that this specific moment in conversation had stayed with her so clearly, years later, and surfaced right after she had defeated Eala in Stuttgart, reveals how much of an impression the Filipino had already made on her. You don't hold on to detailed memories of a junior player's style and then recall them so vividly in a professional interview unless that player had genuinely stood out. Fernandez also opened up about the tense moments late in the second set. At 5-4 while serving at 0:30, her coach had to intervene mentally, reminding her, "Eala isn't going to go down easy. She's going to fight. You're going to have to take the match." Even while leading comfortably on the scoreboard, Fernandez needed that external reminder not to take her foot off the gas or underestimate the resilience of the player across the net. That small but telling detail often gets lost in basic match reports, yet it underscores how the contest carried more tension than the final score suggested. All of this played out against the clear awareness of what had happened earlier in the Porsche Village. Fernandez had been present at the tournament all week. She knew about the autograph craze, the long lines, and the tournament's own social media posts highlighting Eala's popularity. She had walked into the match fully aware that she was facing not just another opponent, but the player at the center of that growing buzz. And despite securing a solid straight sets win, she emerged from the encounter offering nothing but sincere admiration and respect. Earlier during the tournament week, Alex Eala had given a thoughtful sit-down interview with the WTA. She spoke openly about the unique pressures that come with carrying the weight of a passionate, internationally traveling fan base that shows up loudly wherever she plays. She described it as sometimes feeling like a lot to handle, stressing the importance of staying grounded, maintaining a clear sense of self, and approaching the attention with what she called a spoonful of gratitude so it doesn't become overwhelming. Her reflections were measured and remarkably self-aware for someone so young in the professional game. She also touched on the deeper personal meaning of becoming the first Filipino player in the history of the Stuttgart tournament. Having watched the event online for years before ever having the chance to compete there, she described the experience of finally arriving in person as completing a puzzle. It was a vivid and emotionally intelligent way to articulate the feeling, the idea that years of seeing something from a distance leaves an incomplete picture, and stepping into it in real life fills in all the missing pieces. For a 20-year-old making her debut at a nearly 50-year-old prestigious event, entering as a replacement player ranked 45th, that level of grounded perspective stood out. When you step back and look at the full picture of what unfolded in Stuttgart, the week wasn't really defined by the autograph session in the Porsche Village alone, nor was it just about one fan event. It was about what those moments collectively revealed regarding where Alex Eala currently stands in the broader tennis landscape, and how rapidly her cultural influence and fan connection are moving ahead of her official ranking and on-court results. Following Stuttgart, she sat around 44th in the WTA Live rankings with 1,285 points. Her first-round exit earned her $13,211 and just one ranking point. Had she managed to win that opening match, projections suggested she would have climbed close to 38th in the world. Her career-high ranking of number 29, achieved on March 16, 2026 after a strong run to the fourth round at Indian Wells, still feels within reach as the clay season continues. The Madrid Open is set to begin on April 21st, followed by the French Open on May 24th, meaning the upcoming weeks on clay will play a major role in shaping the rest of her year. But what Stuttgart truly highlighted, and what Leylah Fernandez's post-match reaction captured so perfectly, is that Alex Eala is already operating in a rare space that very few players on the WTA Tour ever occupy at this stage of their careers. She arrived as a last-minute replacement, lost in the first round, collected a modest paycheck from a €1 million prize fund, and yet she still left the tournament as the player whose presence dominated conversations in the fan zone and whose signature everyone was chasing. The last time a young player generated this exact kind of cultural momentum and fan excitement at events where she was arguably still too junior or unproven to headline, it belonged to a teenager who would go on to win an astonishing 23 Grand Slam titles. That kind of comparison might sound dramatic or premature, and Alex Eala would almost certainly push back against it herself with her characteristic humility, but the accumulating evidence keeps pointing in that direction. Novak Djokovic took notice. Amanda Anisimova felt compelled to comment on the atmosphere. The Australian Open organizers were publicly embarrassed by the crowd sizes they hadn't properly anticipated. And now Leylah Fernandez, a respected player with every reason to stay fully composed and professional after a convincing win, walked away from Stuttgart unable to speak about Alex Eala without her words, drifting into something close to genuine wonder and admiration. The autograph craze inside the Porsche Village wasn't the main headline. It was simply the most visible symptom of a larger shift. The real headline emerging from Stuttgart is this: a 20-year-old Filipino player who entered the tournament through an injury withdrawal and lost in the opening round has somehow created a situation where even the player who defeated her feels that simply winning on the scoreboard doesn't fully capture or contain what she represents on a deeper level. That is an exceptionally rare kind of power in the world of professional tennis, and it has almost nothing to do with the final score. If you stayed with this all the way to the end, you already understand that this channel approaches tennis coverage from a completely different perspective than most others, digging into the layers, the context, the human stories, and the bigger picture. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, turn on notifications, and get ready because the Madrid Open is right around the corner. And if the events in Stuttgart are any indication at all, Alex Eala's remarkable journey is still only in its early chapters.